Dark Futility. Scene 1. The cave was warm and dimly lit by the flickering flames of torches lining the walls. A cluster of mottled green and blue eggs sat nestled in the center of the cavern floor, gently rocking from side to side. Cracks began forming in the leathery shells as tiny snouts and claws poked through. One by one, the baby dragons emerged, unfurling leathery wings and blinking their large eyes as they took in their new surroundings. Several robed figures stepped forward from the shadows, witches with ancient, weathered faces. "Welcome to the world, young dragonlings," rasped an elderly witch with wispy white hair named Daya. "You have been born into a realm of darkness where foul creatures of the night roam, vampires who feed on the blood of the innocent, werewolves whose bite inflicts an unending curse, and other abominations." The babies chirped and snapped their jaws, already displaying a feisty spirit. The witch continued, "For centuries, we witches have battled against these evil forces using our magic. But we have grown old and weary. You dragons are our last hope, born from the flames of the most powerful of spells to aid us in this never-ending war." Another witch stepped forward, holding a gnarled wooden staff topped with a glowing blue crystal. "You have been blessed with the gift of fire, capable of raising entire villages with just a spark. Your scales are tougher than any armor, and your wings can carry you higher than any arrow can fly. From this day forward, you will train alongside us to hone your supernatural abilities," said the first witch. "The path ahead will be difficult and danger will lurk around every corner. But you are the future, you are the dragon riders who will defeat the darkness and restore light to this wicked world." The dragon babies reared up on their haunches and released a chorus of mighty roars that shook the very cavern itself. Their destiny had been revealed. Scene 2. The full moon hung low and ominous in the inky black sky. It was Kira's 18th birthday, but the young witch felt anything but celebratory as she moped in her bedroom chambers. Her friend witches Sybil and Jasmine had tried to lift her spirits earlier, but eventually gave up and let her wallow in boredom and self-pity. "This day is supposed to be special," Kera muttered, "but it's been utterly boring and lame." That's when the daring idea struck her. "Why are we cooped up here when there's a whole world out there?" She quickly gathered Sybil and Jasmine and outlined her plan to sneak out to the nearby city and its infamous casino for some real fun. Under the cloak of darkness, the three witches made their way through the thick forest surrounding the castle and into the bright, neon-soaked city streets. The sights, sounds, and vibrant energy were intoxicating for Kera after being cooped up for so long. They spent delirious hours at the casino, drinking, gambling, and soaking in the wild atmosphere. But on the trek home, as the first hints of dawn crept over the horizon, they were jumped by a pack of massive, snarling werewolves, Grex, as the foul beasts were known. Kera and her friends tried blasting them with spells, but the werewolves' speed and numbers overwhelmed them. Jasmine managed to hold them off long enough for Sybil to flee, but Kera was captured and dragged away by the beasts. Sybil burst into the castle, gasping for air and screaming about Kera's kidnapping. The witchtress Daya, the eldest and most powerful sorceress, immediately took charge. Her face grew thunderous as she summoned her most skilled witches. "Kera has been taken by the Grex. Those foul werewolves will pay dearly for this transgression," Daya declared, sparks crackling at her fingertips. "Alora, Bastion, Aiden, you are my strongest and most experienced sorcerers. Use all your powers to track them and retrieve Kera at once. Reduce any Grex in your path to ashes if you must. Go now." The three sorcerers nodded, their faces grave and determined. Mastering their most powerful offensive and defensive magic, they set off in pursuit of the werewolf pack's trail. Days passed with no word, until eventually the grim truth became clear: the sorcerers had fallen victim to the Grex as well. How many could possibly outbeat the top witches? What was this sorcery? Daya grew increasingly desperate and despondent. What depraved depths had she underestimated from these vile werewolf beasts? With her finest magic wielders now missing like Kera, she would need to pursue more extreme measures. Scene 3. The dank, musty air of the vampire catacombs reeked of death and stale blood. Kera hung suspended by archaic manacles, her limp body covered in claw marks and bite wounds still oozing thick rivulets of crimson. Her once vibrant green eyes had become hollow, empty sockets, pits of pure darkness staring lifelessly ahead. Heavy footsteps echoed throughout the chamber as Ace emerged from the shadows, his pale, corpse-like visage twisting into a wicked sneer. The ancient vampire's lip curled back, revealing a mouth of razor-sharp fangs as he appraised his latest prize. "At last, my turned witchling has awakened to her true calling," A's guttural tone slithered like a serpent's hiss. "The foul beast did their part in procuring you, and now the greater right can commence." He stalked around Kera, drinking in her exquisite torment with sadistic glee. Though her body remained deathly still, her eyes began flickering with pinpricks of scarlet light. Deep within her psyche as splintered fragments, Kera felt a malevolent presence violating her very soul. "Yes, I can taste the abject terror and anguish welling up inside you as your mortal vigil ends," A's purred, lapping up a trickle of blood from her pallid skin with his distended tongue. Unbridled agony births exquisite rapture for one as ancient as I. "Let it overwhelm you, dear Kera." A's vampiric aura bored into her like a psychic drill, rewriting her very essence through sheer supernatural dominance. Kera wanted to cry out, to plead for mercy and an end to this violation, but her voice was trapped in a hell realm of eternal silence. She could only watch in panoramic dread as her innermost dreams and memories were extinguished one by one like candle flames in a crypt, as A's bit into her flesh. Kira's bones crunched and reshaped as her flesh was remolded by necrotic metamorphosis into a new, unholy form. Leathery wings tore free from her back in a spray of gore, while razored claws and fangs erupted from her hands and jaws. All her wounds instantly healed. This was the vampire's ultimate form unleashed. The ancient vampiric lineage courses through your veins now, corrupting your mortal essence into something transcendent, Ace cackled, baring his own monstrous maws that seemed to clench the void itself between their rows of hooked fangs. "You are the harbinger, the progenitor of an evolving master race that will obliterate the sun itself." At last, the rites reached their sickening apotheosis. Kira's transformation was complete. Her soul remained intact just enough to comprehend the totality of her undying damnation. No longer a pure witch, but not just a vampire either. She was the first of a new breed, an endless perversion combining both dark forces into one unholy, eternal whole. Look upon your true self and gaze into eternity's oblivion, and you are just the first of your kind, Ace exclaimed in rapturous mania, shattering the chains binding Kera. Unleashed from her torture racks, the newly turned abomination dropped into a feral crouch, shredded leathery wings unfurling behind her. She unhinged her jaw in a primal scream of anguish and hate. "You are the Vololok, the mother of Awning's dread harbingers," Ace roared in ecstatic reverie. "You shall go forth and claim this blighted world as the true master race's birthright." Kera answered his dark blessing with a deafening, unholy shriek that shook the catacombs. Abandoning her humanity forever, she took to the air a vile, hideous spawn to sow the seed of the vampire's perverse new genesis. She would collect more regular humans for metamorphosis. Scene 4. Under the malign rulership of Ace, the newly crowned king of vampires, the night world faced an escalating extinction crisis. The cursed vampire lord had discovered an insidious method to convert witches' long-standing enemies and a bastion of good against his unholy brethren into a profane new hybrid supernatural race known as the Vololok. Ace subjugated the feral werewolf pack, the Grex, using his dark dominance to bend them to his foul will. The lupine beasts became his conscripted foot soldiers, continuously sent out on nightmarish raids to capture witches by whatever vicious means necessary. Entire covens were called, their members dragged back in chains to A's black cathedral lair to be defiled. One by one, the captured witches underwent the same blasphemous rites of metamorphosis that stole Kira's soul and remade her into the first Vololok and immortal, damned hybrid melding the vampire's undead abilities with the arcane powers of witchcraft. Their minds were psychically flayed and remolded, their bodies reshaped into winged, fanged horrors that still retained just enough of their original selves to comprehend the totality of their eternal torment. Within the shadowed glyphs adorning A's sanctum, their magical essences were virally poisoned, corrupting their command of the mystic arts into bases for fueling virulent, necrotic blood sorceries. Spells that once conjured vibrant life and nature's plenty became blasphemous incantations to annihilate, to rain and corrode all that was pure and bright. The newly embraced Vololok witches had their severed humanity perversely dangle before them as worm-eaten bait. Whichever tenuous shred remained was used by their vampiric masters to subjugate them as shock troops fiendishly turned against their own kind. With each conquered coven absorbed into the Vololok's grotesque ranks, A's onslaught across the mortal realms swelled like a cataclysmic plague. For the vampires had not been simply content with bolstering their forces through the Vololok conscripts, but were fixated on achieving nothing less than the total extinction of all life itself. By A's vile doctrines, all mortal flesh that walked, swam, crawled, or took wing under the sun's hated rays were to be exterminated or evolved into new breeds of unfettered vampires. Town by town, city by city, the Vololok descended from the blackened skies, their wings blotting out the stars as they rained demonic fire and sorcery to slaughter any who failed to swear fealty to their vampire king. Those who fell were dragged in chains back to the black cathedrals, their souls harvested to incubate eldritch broods of unspeakable new vampiric spawns. The world's surviving mystic orders rallied to combat this unholy nightfall, but their every defensive strategy and arcane counterstrike was outlasted, outmaneuvered by the immortal patience and depraved cunning of the Vololok. Sanctuaries were breached, their most hallowed wards rent asunder as the witches' own corrupted kin turned their hijacked magic against them. With each holy redoubt's downfall, A's shroud of eternal darkness stretched further across the realms. The once vibrant lands of green forests, fertile plains, and shimmering rivers began withering, poisoned by malefic miasmas of pure deathly corruption. Mortal bastions crumbled, their populations either slaughtered down to the last child or subsumed as hateful new breeds of vampiric progeny. As the vampire's charnel tide marched on, it seemed only a matter of interminable time before the nightfall had consumed all light, beauty, and life itself under its grotesque, perpetual eclipse. Scene 5. The sanctum's hallowed grounds ran slick with the blood of the fallen, but Dia would not allow the sacrifices to be in vain. Raising her primal bone staff, she commenced summoning ancient rites not tapped since the world's darkest ages. The sanctum shook as primordial magic coursed through reality's veil. In a blinding sunburst of energy, ethereal forms began coalescing, draconic shapes of scale, horn, talon, and translucent wing taking corporeal form. Dia had not called forth one mere beast, but an entire clutch of newborn chromatic dragons. Towering, serpentine drakes with gemstone hides and eyes blazing like supernovas manifested amidst thunderous resonance. Some were blessed with meteor-forged obsidian-armored hides, while others shimmered brilliantly in radiant hues of ruby, emerald, and sapphire. An overpowering draconic birth force flooded the sanctum, shaking it to its foundations. Scores of witches and warlocks felt the primal call singing through their souls. They abandoned their post and converged on Dia's sanctum, their numbers swelling greater than any recorded coven. In the newborn dragon's mere presence, the witch's magic amplified to potentially world-shaking strength. With a sweeping wave of her staff, Dia enacted an ancient pact to elevate and bind the dragon's sire bloodlines to the gathered mystics. Through mystical biogenesis, the witches transcended into draconic acolytes, a new order imbued with not just enhanced command over mystic forces, but aspects of the primal dragon's own cosmic might. Their arcane stamina enhanced 1,000-fold. The acolytes took to the dragon's backs as winged cavalry to directly engage the blighted realms under A's nightfall. No longer were they footbound, they would bring the fight to the vampire's unholy thresholds. A's mightiest Vololok, gargoyles, and vampiric warlords arose to meet the acolytes' challenge. They clashed in frenzied hostility over the scorched, corpse-littered battle plains, the acolytes riding their thundering chromatic worms while unleashing torrents of draconic sorcery. A single resonant roar from the alpha dragons shook existence as waves of annihilating solar fire and cataclysmic entropic force rippled through reality itself. The Vololok ranks faltered under the primal firestorms, their own profane necrotic magic repelled by the prismatic drake's spectral hides. The drakes were roughly a few feet larger than the Vololok, and so the two were of equal strength. Down swooped the acolytes amid the devastation armored in draconic scales, their bodies imbued with not just devastating magic, but the ferocious physical might and savagery of the most battle-hardened worms. With blades and spellfire, they engaged A's thralls in close quarters, their new preternatural attributes of strength, speed, and primal lethality giving them parity. The Vololok could scarcely believe these were the same mortal witches they had slaughtered with ease before. Now the acolytes fought with draconic tenacity, suicidal, if needed to halt the spread of A's nightfall by even a step. Draconic flame and fang ripped into undead flesh as sorcerous power clashed with darkest profanity. As the pivotal battle raged, each side summoned new cosmic apexes of supernatural might to counter the other's worst horrors. But the acolytes fought on with primal fury for every ravaged soul, every decimated coven that became fuel for A's vile awakenings. They would see his nightfall burn to ashes or gladly be damned alongside it into oblivion's eternal pyre. Conclusion. Ashen snow drifted through the perpetual gloom, carried on chill miasmas that reeked of decay and necromancy. What faceless, nameless city this new wasteland had once been was anyone's guess, just another casualty amid the endless, ageless war waging across the realms. Jagged ruins of shattered spires and toppled monuments formed a maze of shadowed, corpse-littered valleys and razed, husked warrens. Not a single flicker of life or warmth remained in those endless streets, only an eerie, deathless silence that hung like a shroud over the blighted tomb world. Until the first distant, thunderous boom rolled across the ashen dunes in an ominous chorus. It started as just a faint tremor, but rapidly crescendoed to a seismic crescendo of unrelenting shockwaves that shook the buried ruins themselves. "Behold, the final solars of your wretched beasts expire," hissed one vampire with a voice that seemed to echo itself over multiple planes. "Just as your covens last, waning remnants shall follow soon after into the eternal winnow." For countless eras, the unending feud between these supernatural doomsayers had waged on without respite or a lasting victor. Only the gradual attrition of both forces in an endgame of total cosmic annihilation. Through the Vololok's viral expansion, over 2/3 of the mortal realms had already been consumed into the vampire's perpetual nightfall. What scattered pockets of humanity yet remained cowered in dwindling sanctuaries and redoubts, waiting only for the inevitable end when those meager havens too fell to the onslaught. They had become little more than shreds of carrion picked over by the undying supernatural apex predators as their war of extinction waxed unabated. Another acolyte dove screaming towards the vampire lords, hurling every last shard of sorcerous sunfire only to be swatted down to the corpse-littered ruins in a boneless heap. "Your cloying resistances merely spice our ultimate victory's savor. Which breed?" the lead vampire intoned, looking over his kingdom in the shadow of the night. For countless eras, the unending feud between these supernatural doomsayers had waged on without respite or a lasting victor. Only the gradual attrition of both forces in an endgame of total cosmic annihilation. Through the Vololok's viral expansion, over 2/3 of the mortal realms had already been consumed into the vampire's perpetual nightfall. What scattered pockets of humanity yet remained cowered in dwindling sanctuaries and redoubts, waiting only for the inevitable end when those meager havens too fell to the onslaught. They had become little more than shreds of carrion picked over by the undying supernatural apex predators as their war of extinction waxed unabated. Another acolyte dove screaming towards the vampire lords, hurling every last shard of sorcerous sunfire only to be swatted down to the corpse-littered ruins in a boneless heap. "Your cloying resistances merely spice our ultimate victory's savor." "Which breed?" the lead vampire intoned. In that final cosmic instant before being unmade into the void itself, the Alpha raised its great maned head and unleashed one last, deafening roar, one final scream of anguish and unflinching resistance destined to echo across realities until the end of forever. "Futile," was the vampire's last screamed rebuke. Ace knew that he had to let the humans breed so they had something to feed on besides the culling of the planet's herd animals. The Alpha roared again in thunderous, reality-shaking defiance even as its energy was leached away like droplets of incandescent plasma into the endless sleep awaiting them. "Futile,"